On June 12, Israeli F-35Is hit Tehran, killing top commanders and disabling radars, shifting the regional balance.
Yes, people, now lock onto your screens. Because tonight, not only bombs fell, a regime's reputation collapsed, and on the map of the Middle East, a new line was drawn. On the night of June 12th, when the clock showed 3:30, darkness in the skies over Tehran was no longer just the night. In the western part of the city, the sky first echoed with a purple vibration, then suddenly turned red. And the first thing that woke up in the Iranian capital was not the people, but the air defense batteries. Explosions began in the west. Within seconds, similar sounds were heard in northern Tehran as well. Then in the south, along the Kerman and Tabriz line, tremors spread. Clearly, this was not just an air raid. This could only have been a precisely coordinated, multi-layered operation. And as a result of this operation, Tehran's show of force gave way to panic. Because Iranian television tried to call for calm instead of panic. But while silence flowed from the screens, on Telegram channels, Threads, and X, explosion footage was being shared millions of times. In some videos, the sky suddenly went completely white at 3:33 a.m. Seconds later, there was a power outage along the entire western line. In other words, Iran's nervous system took its first hit. So, what were the targets? The first official statement came at 7:04 in the morning. Some military facilities in Tehran were targeted. Damage is under control. But the truth was far beyond these fabricated lines. Because the western Tehran main complex of the Iranian General Staff Headquarters was hit directly and, simultaneously, the command backbone called FiberNet AREsh, carrying the military communication infrastructure, collapsed. This system was a nervous network synchronously controlling missile systems not only in Tehran, but also in Tabriz, Shiraz, and Isfahan. That night, this network was silenced. So who carried out the attack? No official confirmation has come yet, but all military analysis centers point in the same direction. This operation was carried out by the Israeli Air Force, most likely with F-35 E.O.B stealth jets. In the first phase of the attack, it was stated that these jets infiltrated Iranian airspace via Jordan or Iraq. And the detail that shocked everyone: no radar detection was made at the entry points of Iranian airspace. Iranian air defenses only activated after the first bombs fell. This tells us the Iranian regime was not tracking warplanes, it was chasing shadows. The first to pay the price of this negligence were the Shahid Sharif Military Communications Center in Tehran and the Data Transmission Building of the General Staff Headquarters. Almost simultaneously, the jets targeted the Elant listening base located on the western edge of Tehran and the Mehran codename command building affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards. During this time, an unconfirmed number of antennas and signal stations were destroyed along with the main targets. All this was destroyed in only 7 minutes. Can you believe this? This was not a blow to an army. It was a strike against an organism's nervous system. And now Iran cannot issue commands to its own body. At 3:41 a.m., close combat gave way to the electronic warfare phase. Sudden disruptions occurred in Iran's civilian GPS systems. Traffic control systems collapsed. The first warnings of jamming activities began to arrive across Tehran, and flight tracking platforms reported that for 13 minutes, they received no signal from Iran's airspace. So this was not just a bombardment, it was a blinding operation. And here is one more detail. According to Israeli Defense Ministry sources, 36 hours before the attack, Mossad-linked cyber reconnaissance teams hacked into Iran's western fiber infrastructure via a zero-day vulnerability. This cyber attack software, codenamed Night Access, caused Iran's defense networks to be misdirected toward fake targets, meaning Iran's air defense was firing at threats that did not exist while the real threat had already entered. When the clock showed 3:46, This threat was moving not like a foreign enemy, but almost like a guest at ease. And the western front of Tehran's sky was still burning. Videos leaked online showed a 5-story building collapsing, panels blackened and scattered after an electromagnetic blast. Eyewitnesses say that only silence remained after the explosion. This was a silence far beyond Iranian propaganda. It was the helplessness of the regime. So, what does all this mean? Wasn't this attack only a military move? No. This was a showcase strike against the regime's technology system buried in the dark age. Because not only military targets, but also symbols were hit. And the message was, Iran's most fortified castles are no longer secure. Is this just the beginning? No one knows for sure right now. But one thing is certain, on the night of June 12th, the balances in the Middle East shifted. And after that night, nothing will be the same. Because on the night of June 12th, not only walls collapsed, Iran's military backbone was being broken down step by step. Around 5:12 in the morning, while Iranian state television was still making minimal damage statements, a much darker truth was becoming clear behind the scenes. Iranian General Staff Chief Major General Mohammad Bagheri was at the command center during the attack and could not be saved, and he was not alone. It was first leaked on Telegram that Revolutionary Guards Commander Hossein Salami also died at the Shahid Sharif headquarters in western Tehran. An hour later, El Arabiya and then Reuters cited this as a strong possibility. And at 7:28, the Iranian official news agency IRNA was forced to confirm the news. So within hours, the second highest pillar of Iran's armed forces was obliterated. So what does this mean? In short, this was not just an assassination, this was a saw blade cut directly into Iran's command chain. And its effect was so sudden that religious leader Ali Khamenei rushed to appear on television at 8:30 to make urgent appointments. As a result of these hurried appointments, Major General Abdulrahim Mousavi was chosen as the new chief of staff, and the new commander of the Revolutionary Guards became Mohammad Pakpour. So within just 5 hours, Iran's highest military cadre was displaced. And let's not forget, these cadres were not just names, but strategy. Because Bagheri, who was neutralized during the attack, was the architect of Iran's asymmetric defense doctrine, and former Revolutionary Guards Commander Salami was the coordinator of regional proxy militia networks. But both were gone as a result of a joint attack. And that was before the war even started. Did only generals get affected by the attack? No, because another piece of news arriving at the same time sent shockwaves through Iranian defense circles. 6 nuclear physicists working at the Al-Borj Nuclear Technology Institute in Tehran were liquidated in the early morning attacks. It was claimed that 3 of these names were connected to secret nuclear laboratory facilities not visible in last month's UAEA inspections. So what happened? The attack targeted not only the army, but also Iran's nuclear nervous system. And now Tehran is losing ground not only militarily, but also scientifically. And here lies the main point. This was a chain, and Israel broke that chain right in the middle. So why were the links of the chain so easily broken? Because this attack was not only the result of bombs, but also years of leaked intelligence. Iran's communication centers, radar infrastructure, command corridors, all were destroyed with pinpoint precision. Let's say this clearly. This level of accuracy could not have been planned in just one night. This was the final scene of an intelligence coordination that started weeks, even months ago. And in this scene, Iran's generals were only figures. The void Israel created in Tehran's military chain was much more than that. Because the Iranian army was turned into a heap of weapons that nobody who knew how to use it was left to command. And even if new appointments are made, no commander can produce strategy in a few hours. This is not just management, it is loss of reflex. Now we ask you this: if a country's top military leadership collapses in a single night, Isn't this war won even before it starts? And the answer to this question will show that the modern world's gain is much more than the victory Israel achieved. Because this operation not only consolidated Israel's superiority in the region, at the same time, it triggered a crisis within Iran's internal structure that is difficult to repair. And the U.S., although not officially involved, is well aware of the side effects of this upheaval. Questions like, how did Israeli warplanes hit those targets so precisely, find their answer exactly at this point. Yes, from an outside perspective, there are many things to question. For example, why didn't a single missile miss? Because this was not just munitions dropped from the air. It was a scenario written from the inside. Yes, folks, there was another army hidden in the shadow of this operation, Mossad. Israel's legendary foreign intelligence service was not just the visible part of this attack, it was its root. And now we will show you the traces of this silent army in Tehran. Actually, everything dates back months ago. According to Israeli sources, Mossad began deploying special teams into Iranian territory starting February 2025. These teams entered Iran with civilian identities, rented apartments around Tehran, did not communicate, did not attract attention, but each one was marking radar towers, signal centers, and headquarters entrances with GPS-linked microbeacon devices. Matching these coordinates with satellites did not take long at all. And the attack at 3:30 on the night of June 12th hit exactly the coordinates of those markings. So Israeli planes did not bomb a city. They executed the map drawn by light that Mossad had prepared. But how and when were these targets determined? Images related to Iran's western edge, Sina Command Network, had already been leaked in November. However, research continued this year as well. The Advanced Frequency Direction Finding Tower in Tehran was photographed in March this year. And finally, the fiber optic signal network, codenamed SADRA, was identified in April via signal interference testing. All of these may appear as separate operations, but in fact, they were parts of a single plan, codename Shadow Lock. And the one who unlocked it was Mossad. Israeli sources confirmed that some Mossad agents quietly left Iran 48 hours before the attack. An abnormal increase was noticed in airport records among foreign passengers with diplomatic status. This was the moment of withdrawal from the field. The ground was prepared. The turn was for the steps coming from the sky. But beyond all this, how was Iran's air defense so easily overcome? You might remember we mentioned earlier that false targets were generated with radio frequency reflections on Iran's radar system. And the architect of this shadow play was none other than Mossad. Thus, Iran's air defense locked onto 12 non-existent targets. And the real jets slipped inside quietly, unseen. And remember, Israel was not alone in this attack. The U.S. cyber intelligence power was especially active in target verification and coordinate mapping processes. But the U.S. hand was invisible, because this operation was the war of the unseen, the shadows. An Israeli official summarized these moments with these words: "We did not just strike, we destroyed Iran's ability to perceive its own defense. That was the first night. If necessary, there will be second, third nights." So this was only the first link in a potentially ongoing operation chain. And do you know what the real bomb was? According to leaked information, 16 ballistic missile launchers Iran had prepared against Israel were targeted within the first 9 minutes of the attack. 8 of them were around Shemiranat. The rest were inside silos east of Kerman. So Iran's retaliation capability evaporated before it could respond. Analysts believe that such a precise result was achieved through GBU-53/B Stormbreaker smart bombs. Because these munitions can make pinpoint strikes on targets even after being identified without being hindered by clouds, fog, or smoke. And F-35I Adir jets carry these munitions internally, so they are not detected by Iran's radar. But here is the real issue. How many other secrets might such a prepared, deeply infiltrated structure know about Iran? And more importantly, what kind of response will a country whose every secret has been decrypted receive from world politics against its so-called intimidation attempts? Because the pinpoint strikes rained down from the sky by Israel have collided with every diplomatic platform worldwide. Yes, folks, the technical part is done. But now eyes turn to a much more critical area: nuclear facilities. Immediately after the attack, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, urgently contacted Iran, and it emerged that the first targets were 3 nuclear centers: Natanz, Fordow, and Bushehr. These centers form the backbone of Iran's nuclear production capacity. And at 6:47 on the morning of June 13th, the first preliminary assessment note from the IAEA leaked. Natanz facility was directly targeted. No radiation leakage. Structural damage likelihood in underground plants is low. Besides that, a partial power loss was observed in Fordow. However, Bushehr was completely untouched. So what happened? Israel did not attack the nuclear reactor itself, but rather the infrastructure controlling the reactor. Data centers, power lines, communication signals were targeted. This means Iran's nuclear gears were still in place. But they lost the key, and pay attention. According to some military analysis sites, the airstrike on the Natanz facility may not have been conventional munitions but LEK-B class electromagnetic shots. These weapons cause electronic breakdowns rather than physical damage, so buttons can be pressed, but the system does not work. And what did Iran do against these attacks that struck the heart of its nuclear production? They only postponed the entry of external observers to Natanz and Fordow by 24 hours. Therefore, IAEA inspectors could only access Bushehr. Government officials described this decision as a strategic patience policy. But this patience has long since run out in the eyes of the world, and the first reactions were visible inside the UNO. Iran's Extraordinary Security Council meeting request was supported by France and China. France, emphasizing the need for a cautious approach to the process, suggested both sides avoid steps that would escalate tensions. However, the United Kingdom suspended the process due to diplomatic uncertainty and called for a new assessment regarding Iran's nuclear capacity. The US, on the other hand, issued a one-sentence statement: "We have no direct connection to the operation." But behind the scenes, very different things are happening. According to senior sources at the Washington Post, the US took an inactive but passively approved approach to this attack. That means they did not participate, but turned a blind eye. So, why is this diplomatic stance important? Because Washington is using Israel in its strategy to surround Iran in the region. Therefore, Israel's actions should largely be seen as jointly considered steps by the US and Israel against the nuclear threat Iran poses to the world. And now, while Israel is taking these steps, it has not only struck Iran's infrastructure, but also delivered a blow to Tehran's morale. Military experts say that if Iran is still using old protocols, analog systems, and underground connections in mid-2025, Israel is determined to leave it outside the digital age. That is why the war is won not only by exploding bombs, but also by targeted signals, darkened screens, and silent reactors. So how should we evaluate the current state of the war? Is Iran becoming diplomatically isolated, or is this loneliness the first step of a conscious silence? Because there is no noise yet on the streets of Tehran, but the army says there will be a response. And Israel implies this is just the beginning. This ambiguity needs to be cleared soon, because this is no longer a one-night reckoning. This could be the end of an era. And as with every era's end, an extremely noisy silence reigns in the Middle East. Headquarters in Tehran are regrouping. The Revolutionary Guards are preparing a new front, saying there will be a borderless response. This sentence means something very clear in Iranian terminology. Diplomacy is over. The stage now belongs to missiles. So where will the response come from? Syria, the militia networks in Iraq, or directly from Israel? While possibilities are being debated on the Iranian side, Israeli defense systems have already gone on full alert. Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow 3, and Iron Beam laser defense network, all in active mode. Because this attack was not only on infrastructure, it was a blow to the security fabric of the Iranian regime, the faith of the people, and the courage of proxy forces. Anger is growing among the Iranian public. The most shared phrase, "A country that cannot protect its secrets can no longer lead." Information from military sources is even more striking. Some high-ranking officers have requested to be relieved of duty, and discontent voices are rising in the command chain. Meanwhile, the Israeli side is clear. If necessary, a second wave operation will come. And this wave may target not only Iran, but also all proxy structures in Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. Because experts say this attack temporarily disabled the nuclear threat Iran was trying to expand through its partners. But more importantly, it paralyzed the strategic decision reflex. With this operation, Israel has consolidated its regional leadership position on the ground. With the silent approval of the US, now Iran is at a crossroads. Either it will return to diplomacy or drag the region into a bigger fire with its response. Because this attack targeted not only the facilities, but also the regime's prestige and deterrence. And this was a new border drawn in the Middle East. Now no one can predict the future with old maps. Because tonight, the lines have changed. And although the war has no name yet, its effects have already begun to be written.